Hi everyone and welcome. This is part 2 of our embossing videos here. I get to use the rest of the chapter 2 embossing folders from 2022. And I say the rest because Pete has done part 1 to this video and he will have used all of the other embossing folders from chapter 2. How exciting. So I'm just going to be showing you a few of my favorite techniques to get the most out of your embossing folders. So let's get going with part 2. So I am going to start with, let's have a look through the embossing folders here. The first technique that I'm going to be doing is just using some of our luster wax on the embossed card, on black card. And do you know what, I know that we all know how to use luster wax, but hopefully I can provide something extra here because there's a few other bits you can do, and there is sort of a right and a wrong way to do it. So let's try. We're going to start with just a little rectangle of black card that I've cut here. Of course, everybody knows this, but it's worth mentioning. We're going to give it a spritz on both sides, and that is just with water. Now, I'm going to be using an alcohol spray on one of my makes in just a bit, but I'll talk to you about that then. This is just water. I could drink that. I mean, I could drink the alcohol too. I'm not going to, because that would be wrong. So I'm going to start with just a spritzed piece of this black card. I'm going to run it through my machine with this. This is the Fan Tiles embossing folder here, and this is a really lovely one because of all that detail that you get. We've got these tiny little dots here within each fan, which are going to pick up so nicely on using the luster wax. So let's just run this through the machine. So it doesn't matter which way I'm putting it through on this card here. A great piece of advice is if you are running through a die cutting machine with an embossing folder, especially with a sort of a 3D or a textured embossing folder, maybe just tilt it diagonally a little bit because it's going to go through the machine much better. So let's put it through the switch machine here. You'll notice I've taken off the top leaf, following the instructions on the multi-purpose platform. And there we are. Now it is an embossing folder, so I'm going to put it through again. And you know what? This time I am going to use the reverse function. So that's 3 times through that machine. And there we go. So 3 times. The reason I'm doing it 3 times is that's going to give me the best impression. I mean, you can already see here, it is so clean. I just love embossing because of the impact. Every time they come out with a machine, I'm shocked, even though I do it every single day. It never fails to shock me. So do I have a scrap piece of paper? Do you know what? I've got a little envelope down here. So I'm going to put this on here. The reason for this is that I don't want to get any on my media mat because luster wax doesn't come off very easily. You can clean it off, it's just going to be a bit of a pain. So you'll notice I'm getting most of it off my finger here, so onto this scrap piece of card, and then I'm going to start coming in, and at first you won't even notice that it's going onto the card, and that's intentional because what people are tempted to do with luster wax, and I'm not excluding myself here, is we tend to be a bit impatient, you know, and we'll get a big old scoop of it and put it on there, and then that's what's going to ruin your make. You want to take your time. We always say, and I'm sure everyone is already expecting me to say this because we say it so often in our videos, that luster wax is like salt in a meal. You can keep on adding it and adding it, but you can't take it out, so you need to add it little by little. And that's the best piece of advice I ever got to do with luster wax. Some people put this in their hair. I learnt that when I was on Create and Craft. One of the presenters told me Some people get big blobs of it and put it in their hair like hair wax. But I'm not going to do that. So there we are. That's the basic technique of this. I'm not going to carry on with this because it's not, if I'm honest, it's not the best thing to watch. But here's where it gets interesting. Now, over here, I've got a few different embossing folders from chapter 2 that I've used this technique with. Now, they all look really lovely like this. But to get the absolute most out of them, there's an extra step you can take, which is to buff your design. So the area that you've added the luster wax to, all you need to do is get a dry piece of tissue and just go over it like this. Now, it's not going to take any of the luster wax off, but what it's going to do is it's going to make it shine. Now, do you know what? I'm just going to buff the one here, and hopefully we'll see a bit of a difference. And if not, it's because of the cameras, not because of me. But I can already see that this shining here. Well, let's have a look at how this, 5 minutes later, there we go. At the shine on that there, it just kind of picks it up and it just adds that extra level of kind of shine. You know, if you add a gold ring or something shiny like this, you might buff it to make it shine. And that's what I've done there. So that is how I would use my luster wax. Now, to finish this card, all I would do, might add just a tiny bit more here. I'm going to carry on going here, just to the back here. Just add a little bit more. I'm going for subtlety on this one. All I'm going to do is add this to the front of the card. And I'm going to search desperately for some adhesive that I have not brought with me, which is great, but not to worry. I'm going to plug in a glue gun instead. Changed my mind, I found my adhesive roller. And I've also noticed it's got a little splodge there. This is exactly what I was talking about when you add too much. Now, I'm going to cover this though very, very cleverly with a die cut piece here. So this is the pattern butterfly. I'm going to stick that right over there, and it just so happens to be exactly where I planned on putting it anyway. So I'm going to add my adhesive. Oh, let's just come off a little bit there. I'm going to add it to the front of my card element, like so. The beauty of an adhesive roller. And then my little sentiment to finish off the story of the card. When I first started, I never used to know what people meant by that, the story, finish off the story. How can a card tell a story? But you guys will know what I mean. It finishes off the whole composition because it all makes sense. There's a butterfly on it, and it says, "You make my heart flutter," because butterflies flutter. I'm sure you all got that anyway. And there we are. So there is my first card make. And that was just the technique of adding the luster wax and then buffing it out. And it's lovely. So now we're on to technique number 2. This one changed my life. So texture roll is fantastic stuff anyway, but there's a whole new technique that's relatively new to me. You can, if you take rose gold or gold texture roll, you can create a gradient from silver to whichever pigment that you've chosen. So you can either go silver all the way to gold or silver to rose gold. I'm going to show you that now. Now this is the Flower Power die set. This is a multi-level it's not die set, it's a multi-level embossing folder, which means that you can have up to 2 levels, and this works brilliantly on something like that because we've only got those 2 levels to work with. But I'll show you what I mean by that in a sec. So for this, for textural, I do need to make sure that I've got it the right way around. So if I open this up, I want my impression, I want it to be embossed upwards on this side. So I'm gonna have it so that the 3D element is popping out onto the shiny side. So I need to make sure that that's happening here. I don't need to spritz with texture roll, which is great because it has the give in it. Let's just fumble this into the Big Shot machine. And I think we just need the 1 roll through with this as well because it's textural. Again, it just embosses so well. Now, I mentioned I was going to be using some alcohol spray. Now, very cleverly, I have just taken, I think this is a perfume bottle or something like that. I don't know. I found it. I emptied it. So pour whoever's perfume I used. But I emptied it and I filled it full of just some really watery hand wash. So it's an alcohol spray. I know that because I can smell it. It's strong. All I'm going to do is take some kitchen roll, or kitchen towel as they call it over in the US, I think. And I'm going to spray it on to here. Now, all I'm going to do is rub off that top layer of pigment here. So, and at the same time, it cleans my multimedia mat, which is a twofer. Now I can already see that this is taking off a level of the rose gold pigment on here. So I'm creating that lovely blend. Such a cool technique. I'd love to say that I came up with it myself, but it was Pete Hughes, again, who showed me this technique. And look at that, it's so effective because everywhere that that's kind of embossed and has an impression there, retains some of the some of that spray. I mean, some of the spray retains some of the pigment. My head isn't on today. So there we are. We're getting a blend here from silver to rose gold. That is so cool. I love it. It just adds an extra level to these texture rolls. So you can do this with the rose gold or the gold, and have a look at the card that I've created earlier with a lovely sentiment I just came up with myself. Keep it classy. And this goes from the rose gold all the way to the silver, and it's subtle. Again, I love subtlety. I love a bit of bling, so what's not to like about this card here? Keep it classy. That's going to be my next catchphrase. Okay, and that was technique number 2. Okay, on to our third technique. So this one is going to involve some lovely ink blending. I'm going to be using this folder here. Again, these are all the Chapter 2 2022 folders. It's the first time I'm getting to use them, so I'm really excited. I love them. This one is Ornamental Motif here, and you'll see why I've chosen this one in just a sec. So for this technique, I'm going to create this blend. I wasn't going to spend all my time blending, but there are a few tips that I can give just to show you how to get a really nice blend with this. So first of all is just choosing your colours. because you want two colours, when they run into each other, are going to create another colour, you know, a brand new colour. So you can see in this one that I've already done here, we're going blue, we've got this lovely green here. I didn't actually need to add this green. I brought it with me in case, you know, it hadn't worked for some reason. I don't know why I brought it with me to the video, because I've already checked it. But as the blue ran in to that yellow, we got the lovely green there anyway. So just think about your colours and what they're going to make when they blend together. So coming in with the blue. Now, I guess the best tip I can give is when you get a brand new blending pad, whether it's, you know, one of our Sizzix multi-tool ones, or whether it's, you know, a Ranger one or something like that, just any other company's blending pad, wear it in. So get a load on there, cake it in it, and then get it all off, rub it onto your craft mat. It's better to have one like these are about 10 years old, some of these blending pads, and you know, we use them kind of intermittently and we don't wash them or anything. You keep that colour in there because you want it to get packed with the stuff, and that's what creates a really nice blending pad. It goes on really smoothly then. So here I come in with my yellow, so you can see the green in between. I always come in from the side, so start on my multimedia mat, then go straight onto the cardstock. And I know that I'm going to be blending to, like, starting my next one here, so I'm going a bit further than I need to, so that I'm going to get that crossover. And have a look at that. You can see the green that's been created there. So I'm not going to do the rest of this because you can see exactly how I've been blending. I'm just going to switch to the one that I've made earlier. And have a look at this blend. It's a rainbow blend, and as I mentioned before, I like to sort of create a story with the card, so the sentiment for this one is the rainbow sentiment, which I'll show you just very soon. Now, here's the reason I chose this embossing folder. It's because it is so this is actually a 3D embossing folder, but it's very shallow. It's not got too many kind of curves to it, and that lends itself well because I don't want any of the card, the white card, to show through here. Now, I'm not going to spritz the ink. I'm just going to spritz the back there because we all know if I spritz the ink, then it's going to manipulate the ink on there, and I don't want that. So let's check that I'm embossing on the right side. I am. And then, again, we run through the machine. It's lovely that I don't have to wind it through. I can wait here now. Go and make a cup of tea. There we are. And again, I'm not going to run it through again. I feel like this is going to be enough. So here is my emboss. I'll pick that up in just a sec. Put my folder over here. But have a look at that. So the shallowness of the emboss means that it hasn't broken through the white cardstock underneath, which is something, you know, I had to learn the hard way, trying different embossing folders. Some of them will emboss so well that it will just tear the paper slightly, and you wouldn't notice unless you had a different colour on the top than was underneath. Anyway, all I would do with this is just add it to a card front. And have a look at that. My favourite colour is rainbow. Absolutely lovely. And that was the third tip. And time for my final technique. Now, this is using our Sizzix creamy acrylics in the metallic. So we've got the gold and the silver. We also have a rose gold that you can use, but I've just chosen to go with the gold and silver. So let's apply, oh, I think that's dried up a tiny bit. Let's, oh, it's a handy little thing. Let's try that again. Let's apply a nice bit of gold paint, and then also a bit of silver. I'm going to take my texture tool and I'm going to use my media mat to just drag this down like that. I'm going to create, I'm going to fill the whole thing here, which I would, but then I'm going to come in with some of the silver. So I'm using both the colours, but I want them to be separate. I don't want to kind of blend them together. That's going to make an ugly sort of brown colour. But I would end up with something that looks like this, but it'd be completely full, like this one that I created earlier. So I'll put this over to one side. And basically, all we're going to do with this is emboss it. But I thought this was a tip worth showing because our creamy acrylics, especially in the metallic, have got a lot of elasticity in them. Now these are artist quality paints. They are quite viscous, hence the sort of creamy acrylic. They're really great for creating nice patterns, nice organic sort of techniques on here using that texture tool. And these are great for embossing because the paint will not crack. Now this is Abstract Flowers, again from chapter 2, and you can see here, you can already see that this is a particularly detailed embossing folder, but it's going to be no problem for this paint here. So I will give the back of the cardstock a spritz. And again, I'm going to make sure that I am embossing on the right side. So let's do that like so. And then we just run through the machine. Ooh. Knocking stuff over again. And the moment of truth, how about that? Just look at how well that embosses. Now the creamy acrylics, they can really, take a deep emboss here. They're not going to split, they're not going to crack like some chalkier paints would. So, you can go to town, you can use some really detailed embossing folders like this fantastic Abstract Flowers one. And then all I would do with this, again, would just be to put it on a card front. But I decided to show you, here's one with another. Now, this isn't a die set from chapter 2, but it's the most detailed die set, embossing folder that I could find. This one's so deep, but you can see how it handles with that lovely metallic creamy acrylic. And here I've used the rose gold and the silver. Here I have used the gold and the silver. So the possibilities are endless with this technique. It's a really, really lovely one. And then finally, just before I go, some honourable mentions. This here again is using that Flower Power die set, and I have embossed into some of our metallic flakes. So all I've done there is I've painted this with probably 3D adhesive, just using a paintbrush, and then I've brushed the flakes over it, got them to transfer, ran through the embossing folder through the Big Shot machine, and again we've got the kind of give in them that it's not going to crack and ruin your design. It's just created a really lovely impression in there. And then this over here is Abstract Pattern, and this is that blending technique that I used earlier. This is just the other die set that I hadn't gotten around to showing, but that's only that's just bad luck. I didn't get to show that. I love it just as much as all the rest of these fantastic embossing folders in chapter 2. So that is about it from me today. Make sure, again, as always, that you give us a like. If you like the video, comment. I always say it, I can't say it enough. We love reading your comments. We had some really fantastic, lovely feedback from the last videos from you guys, which filled my heart with glee reading it. I loved it. So thanks for that, and I will see you next time.